Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly of Matt Reilly Fly Fishing. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, Marvin. How are you?
Just trying to stay out of trouble. How's the guide calendar looking? You kind of getting booked up for the summer?
Yeah, man, it's been good. I guess people are looking to bust out and get on the water, or they're bored out of their minds from being in the house for a couple months. Because it seems like I don't have an open day until maybe like the second week of August at this point. So it's a good problem to have, but it's hard to believe it's almost July already. Time's kind of been flying.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's good news for you because I think, knock on wood, your weather's going to hold. I think, we're recording this on the 24th of June, kind of seasonable temperatures and, doesn't look like any blowout rains coming in the next week to 10 days.
Yeah, it's been, so today is the first day of it looks like a pretty stable weather pattern. It should be sunny and then like 70s and low 80s the next couple of days. But yeah, there's rain in the forecast, but like I say, in the summer, we're getting to that point where it's an odd day when there isn't rain in the forecast, and you just kind of have to see if it happens or not. I prefer to err on the side of fishing rather than staying home because they're calling for 40% chance of rain or something like that.
Yeah, that's what that $300 rain shell's for.
100%, man. 100%.
Well, listen, I've been watching your social media feed. Looks like you've been getting after it in a big way on the smallmouth. What's going on out there?
Yeah, so this whole spring, I mean, it's been said before, but it's been strange in a couple different ways. But we've had a lot of rain, and I've had to run around quite a bit to stay on clear-ish, optimal water. But luckily, there's some tributaries and smaller rivers around that have afforded that luxury, while the New River has been, it's been a temperamental beast for the last couple of months. It's still kind of high and dirty, and it's at least the New River Valley seems to be pretty saturated with water because the flows are coming down pretty slowly. But we're at the time of year where topwater is super viable. But in the fish are active, you just have to find good conditions. If you can't find clear water, either fishing down with dumbbell flies and trying to pick fish off the bottom, or fishing tight to the banks with more visible streamers, it's kind of the way to go. But yeah, we've been fortunate to be able to stay on some fish the last couple of weeks.
Well, that's good. And I imagine, right, is that things kind of keep getting warm and the water keeps clearing up, the topwater bite's just going to keep getting better and better. Yeah,
it should, particularly up on the New as things drop out, hopefully, and clear up. I guess the bright side to having high water for a long time is they haven't been fished much for the last couple months. So, we should be looking forward to some good fishing here in the next week or two.
Got it. And we've got a question from Drake, came to us on our Instagram feed. He wanted to get your thoughts on summer streamer techniques when the bass aren't on top. How would you attack that problem?
Yeah, so I mean, there are days in the summer. I mean, I strongly believe that the big fish pattern in the summertime is topwater, and there are days when the fish don't really want to come up. You're not catching as many fish as you think you should. A lot of it depends on the river and how high the water is and all that kind of deal. But if you have sort of low to average stream flow conditions and seems like good topwater conditions, I've found a lot of times sticking with topwater and just finding fish can be viable. I mean, I hate doing the same thing for too long without results, but there are some days where the fish are just slow, and sticking with it will pay off. I had a day last week like that where the morning was pretty slow. We had kind of a weird weather front move in, and we didn't have that many fish in the boat by lunchtime, but after lunch, we were talking about switching things up and moving to streamers, but I just had a good feeling about we were coming up on a good piece of water, and I said we'll fish that, and if things still aren't going on, we'll make some changes. And like 2 minutes after lunch, we got a 20 3/4, and then we caught a bunch more fish that afternoon, and a couple more over 20, and it ended up being a really good day. But I think it was just the conditions. The fish were kind of put off, and it was more about finding active fish than anything. But I would say, the two situations where I'll fish streamers during the summertime is, if you do have a high water event, if things get dirty and high. And also, like I kind of just described, you have a cold front move through or something like that. It just puts the fish off a little bit. The other one would be if the New River is a dam controlled river, and like last year we had it was kind of frustrating. The dam would it was the release schedule. There's no schedule, but the way they were releasing water was pretty inconsistent. You'd have rises and falls, sometimes multiple throughout the day, and whenever the water's dropping or has just dropped, it sort of sends fish, pulls fish off the banks, and they can scatter and sort of, they're not really set up in super predictable locations. And so fishing streamers in that situation allows you to cover a little more water and theoretically get in front of a few more fish than, say, throwing a topwater bug and, where you're just fishing maybe an 8-foot, 10-foot radius from that bug. But the number one thing that I would say with smallmouth bass and streamer flies is to fish slow, and particularly in the summertime. Your big fish are masters at optimal foraging. They're not gonna burn a bunch of calories to eat a small meal. They're gonna try their best not to burn hardly any calories, and that's part of the reason why I think they take topwater bugs so slowly, is because they sometimes it's just because they know that the bug's not going to get away, and they can sort of take their time coming up to eat it and get a meal for few calories expended. But they've got a lot of food sources in the summertime. There's lots of bugs. There's lots of young of the year fry and smallmouth and minnows and bait fish and crayfish. And a big fish is not going to chase super aggressively, particularly as it gets real hot in the summertime. So I tend to fish pretty slowly, almost on a dead drift sometimes, with small twitches worked in there. Fast, real fast jerk strip retrieves and where you're retrieving all the way to the boat have their place, and you'll trigger some fish, into an aggressive response that way sometimes. But that becomes sort of a, you're looking for a fish that can be sort of tipped into reacting to a fly, and you sort of reduce your numbers that way, versus fishing in a way that a fish is going to eat your fly out of like a feeding take versus a reaction, I guess. So slow, I think, is always better. And then, but like I sort of just hinted at, if you're not getting any action, if things are just super slow and weird, and you can't get fish to move, something that I like to do is, with a streamer fly is to, throw a cast to good holding water, a spot that you think a fish might be holding, and then fish it real fast right off the bat. Like be into your first strip or rod movement by the time the fish or the fly's hitting the water. Fish it, 2-3 feet out away from where your fly is going to hit, and then sort of scan the water, see if a fish is making moves on it, and then continue to fish it from there. But sometimes that real fast entry and retrieve can sort of trigger a fish into just an aggressive strike if they're not really feeding or moving around all that much. So that's something to keep in mind. But I would say just overall, fishing pretty slow is sort of the main theme. I know I rambled a lot, but I think that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think it does too. And, folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. And if you send them to us, you can send the questions to us in any of our social media channels. A lot of times we get them on Facebook. That's probably one of the easiest places. Instagram's another good one. If you'll send them to us on the Articulate Fly, if we use your question, I'll send you some Articulate Fly swag, and we'll enter you in a drawing for some really cool stuff for Matt at the end of the season. And, Matt, it's not a fishing report with you if you don't tell us what you're writing for the Rural Virginian. What's coming out this week?
Yeah, man, the column this week it's just sort of a, I guess, essay, you could call it, just a story that I wrote about. It's about smallmouth fishing, but it's about something that I always kind of have in the back of my mind. I guess you could say it haunts me or freaks me out when you think about sort of exploring new water. Like I just touched on with the streamer question is, you can go to a new piece of water and fish it for the first time, and you can just have bad conditions, quote unquote, or a weird day where the fish are just not very active, and it can be a Class A piece of water, and you can leave, sort of disappointed, and that can leave a little bit of a stain on that piece of water in your mind. But on the flip side, you can go to a great piece of water and have a really good day, and you can sort of view that same piece of water drastically differently, just depending on what the circumstances are and what your success is like. But it's just a story about a piece of water that has always been sort of a backup option for me, that I fish handful of times a year. But first time we went there, we had a pretty slow 4-day. We caught a handful of fish and no real pattern was there, and we went back a year later and just lit it up. It's like one of the best days of smallmouth fishing I've ever had, and so it's just basically story about keeping your mind open to exploring new water and what it could potentially hold and that kind of thing.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'll drop a link to that in the show notes so folks can check it out. And even though your calendar is filling up fast, why don't you let folks know how they can reach out to you, Matt, so they can book you for the second half of August, or maybe get some smallmouth fishing in September?
Yeah, the website is mattreillyflyfishing.com, and I've got all my social media links and email and phone number and all that on there. So however you feel best reaching out, I'd love to hear from you. I do have a few days left in July that I'm looking to fill, but August is kind of where it's at right now. And then we do have, we do this hosted smallmouth camp with the Reilly Rodcrafters team every year, and that's coming up in, I guess it's like 3 weeks from now. I just sold the second to last spot, and we still got one more spot open. So if anybody's interested in spending a couple of days staying in some cabins and fishing some awesome smallmouth water in Southwest Virginia with some really good guides from the Mid-Atlantic region, look us up or get in contact with me, and we'll get you set up. It's always a good time, so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, for folks that aren't familiar, why don't you let them know just some of the Mid-Atlantic guides that you're going to have, right? Because you probably got Joe Mahler and other folks, right?
Yeah, so Joe, I guess you did an interview with him, but he's from Florida. He's more of he's a casting instructor and a guide, and he's more of a host for the event. My dad, Chris Reilly, the owner of the rod company, and Joe are sort of the hosts, and then we've got some good friends of mine, Jim Richmond, who guides on the New River down here, and William Hiersniak, who guides up in Northern Virginia for smallmouth as well, Eastern Trophies fly fishing, and Ellie Rhodes, who guides smallmouth on the James out of Scottsville. They'll all be guides for the event, and we've got a couple other local guides that'll be filling in, but there's some really great smallmouth guides and definitely people to learn from. So it's a pretty cool event in that respect.
Yeah, and I'll drop a link to that in the show notes too. And, folks, it's a great time of the year to be outdoors. We've all been cooped up for a while. You owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Marvin.